Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhyani classes. If you are watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video, we will cover the first part of the chapter, A Triumph of Surgery, written by James Herriot from class 10 CBSE. So let's get started. So before looking at the chapter, let's understand what is the triumph of surgery. So triumph means a victory or great success or getting something bigger at some point in life, and surgery is a medical treatment in which the human body or animal's body part can be repaired or removed by the doctor. So this story talks about a dog named Tricky, and he falls seriously ill because of overfeeding by his mistress, and his mistress consults a veterinary surgeon. So let's see, does he perform an operation and does the dog recover? So let's understand the chapter with line by line explanation now. I was really worried about Tricky this time. So here the narrator is talking about a dog named Tricky, that I was really worried about Tricky this time. That means when the narrator saw the dog, he became worried because Tricky was looking ill. So Tricky is a pet dog owned by a rich lady. And when the narrator saw this dog, he was really worried and tensed because I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance. So as the doctor was driving his car and says I had pulled up my car when I saw him, that means when he saw this dog Tricky, he just stopped his car there and looked at the dog, and this time Tricky was walking with his mistress, and then the narrator was shocked by looking at Tricky's physical appearance because he was not able to walk properly. So physical appearance means the way one looks, such as height, weight and the structure of the body, etc. And says he had become hugely fat like a bloated sausage with a leg at each corner. So when he looked at the dog, he was really shocked because of his physical appearance, and says he had become hugely fat. That means he gained his body weight and fat more than the normal one, and he was looking like a bloated sausage with a leg at each corner. So he was looking like a bloated sausage. So what do you mean by bloated sausage? That means it's long and large with a mixture of liquid or gas inside, usually made from pork along with salt, spices and other ingredients such as grains or breadcrumbs, etc. So this dog Tricky was looking like a bloated sausage because of overfeeding, and he had become hugely fat. So the dog had become extraordinarily fatty, and that's why he was looking like a bloated sausage, as if his two legs were inserted in both the corners. So it had become hugely fat. So you can see in the picture a rich lady named Mrs. Pumphrey explaining everything to Mr. Herriot near her house, and you can see the dog Tricky as well. So he is looking so fatty after having overdiet, and his legs also looking like a bloated sausage and unable to walk properly, and his tongue is also out of his jaw and looking very lethargic and restless and poor. Further, he says his eyes bloodshot and rheumy, stared ahead, and his tongue lolled from his jaws. So here the narrator is saying that his eyes bloodshot and rheumy. That means he noticed the eyes of the dog, and it was red in color, and his eyes were full of water, and says stared straight ahead, and his tongue lolled from his jaws. That means the narrator was looking straight the dog, and his tongue was lolled. That means his tongue was out of his jaws. So he was feeling so tired and thirsty, and he was breathing very heavily just because of overweighting, and his tongue was out of his jaw. So bloodshot means red in color and rheumy means watery, and says Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain he was so listless, Mr. Herriot. So when the narrator came closer to the dog, Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain. That means Mrs. Pumphrey hurried to explain everything to the doctor, that he was so listless. That means she said to Mr. Herriot that her pet dog is feeling sick and lethargic, and the dog was showing no interest in playing or running around. So hastened means hurried or quickened, and says he seemed to have no energy. So Mrs. Pumphrey also told the doctor that he seemed to have no energy. That means her dog had no energy at all, and he had become so fat and heavy in weight. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, So I have been giving him some little extra between meals to build him up, some malt and cold liver oil, and a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep. Nothing much really. So here she also explains the doctor that I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition. That means lack of food or not having enough food to eat. So she thought that her dog is suffering from malnutrition. So she gave him extra food to eat or more than normal the dog was having, such as malt or cold liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep. So she gave him an extra diet just because of her dog couldn't sleep well at night. So she thought that her dog would become more energetic. So she was trying to explain everything to the doctor about how Tricky became like a bloated sausage. So some malt means a kind of beer or whiskey, and cold liver oil means an oil obtained from the liver of the fish or similar species. And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? So here the narrator asked her, did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? That means the doctor had already suggested her not to give him extra sweet things, and then the doctor reminded her, did you cut down on the sweet things, or I'm sure you stopped giving him sweet things. And then in reply Mrs. Pumphrey says, oh, I did for a bit, but he seemed to be so weak I had to relent. So in reply she answered the doctor, oh, I did for a bit. That means she cut down the sweet things but a little bit, because he seemed to be so weak I had to relent. That means she stopped giving him sweet things, but then she felt her dog becoming weak day by day, and then again she started giving him extra sweet things and diet, and she could not stop her and agreed to give him sweet things, and says he does love cream, cakes and chocolates. So she told the doctor that he does love cream cakes. That means her dog Tricky loved to eat cream, cakes and chocolate very much, and said, I can't bear to refuse him. So she said that she could never refuse these things to give her dog. Further he says, I looked down again at the little dog, and that was the trouble. So here the narrator is saying that I looked down again at the little dog. That means once again he was looking at the dog very carefully and understood what is the trouble or problem the dog was suffering from. So now he understood that the dog is suffering from his body weight as he was eating the sweet things, and that was the trouble causing for the dog, and says Tricky's only fault was greed. So he understood that why this dog is suffering just because of greediness. So what is greediness here? That means he wanted to eat more and more, and it was never able to stop itself from eating more. So eating a high amount of fat or proteins, his body weight increased a lot, and then he was not able to walk properly, and says he had never been known to refuse food. So whenever Mrs. Pumphrey used to give him food, he cannot refuse. That means Tricky used to eat everything whatever she gave him to eat, and day by day his body weight increased drastically, and says he would tackle a meal at any hours of the day or night. So this dog never refuses any kind of food, and he would tackle a meal. That means he would take care or eat a meal at any time of the day or night. So there was no routine for him to eat food, but whatever food was given to him, he eats very quickly at any time of day and night. And I wondered about all the things Mrs. Pumphrey hadn't mentioned. So here the doctor understood why this dog looked so lethargic and why it is not showing interest and playing around, and said, I wondered about all the things. That means he was thinking many things at that time, and what he was thinking? He was thinking Mrs. Pumphrey hadn't mentioned. That means Mrs. Pumphrey had not mentioned what are the other things she used to give him to eat, and the things she had only mentioned that she used to give him cold liver, Horlicks, malt and other sweet things, because she believes that her dog Tricky was suffering from malnutrition. So he was just wondering, and then asked her, are you giving him plenty of exercise? So immediately he asked her, are you giving him plenty of exercise? That means he asked the question that are you giving exercise to the dog? And then she replied to the doctor that Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see, but Hawking, the gardener, has been down with lumbago, so there has been no ring throwing lately. So she replied that, well, he has his little walks with me. That means her dog does walk for some time in a day along with her, just like we are walking right now. And said, but Hawking, the gardener, has been down with lumbago. So she told the doctor that my gardener is suffering from Hawking. So Hawking is a disease where you have pain in your muscles and in the back. So her gardener was not able to take Tricky out every day because he was suffering from Hawking disease, and says so there has been no ring throwing lately. That means there was no exercise happening around, such as ring throwing, jumping, and running, and he was having only little exercise throughout the day, and it was just walking for some time. Further, he says, I tried to sound severe, now I really mean this. So, here the narrator is saying that I tried to sound severe. That means he wanted to tell something very important to Mrs. Pumphrey on a serious note, because he understood why her dog suffering from illness, and dog's condition was very poor at that time and very bad. And then doctor says, if you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he is going to be really ill. So very seriously the doctor advised her that if you don't cut his food, that means if you don't reduce giving food to him and give him more exercise, he is going to be really ill. So the doctor also advised her that you should also give him more exercise rather than giving him more food to eat, and if you don't do this, he will become more ill or sick, and says you must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet. So the doctor also told her that you must harden your heart. That means you must be strong and there should be no emotions here, and cut down his food on a serious note and give him more exercise instead of giving him over diet, and you should be very careful, otherwise he is going to be really ill. Mrs. Pumphrey wrung her hands. So after hearing the doctor, Mrs. Pumphrey wrung. That means she started squeezing her hand and started feeling sad and nervous because she had to cut down on food, and it was very difficult for her to be very strict with her dog. That means she started becoming nervous because it was very difficult for her to be very strict with her dog, because she used to give him extra diet. And then she said, oh, I will, Mr. Herriot. I'm sure you are right, but it is so difficult, so very difficult. So later on she replied to the doctor that, oh, I will, Mr. Herriot. That means she understood what the doctor had said and agreed with it and said, I'm sure you are right, but it is so difficult. That means he understood that, yes, you are right, but it is so somehow difficult for me to cut down his food. But she assured the doctor that she will do the same and promised that she will try to be very strict and careful and give him more exercise rather than giving him extra diet, and says she set off head down along the road as if determined to put the new regime into practice immediately. So after having a conversation with the doctor, she set off. That means she ended the conversation and left from there, putting her head down along the road with her dog Tricky, and says as if determined to put the new regime into practice immediately. That means she was looking determined, that means confident, and that she is going to control the diet very strictly and setting up a new regime. That means she is going to develop a new routine for her dog Tricky, or to do exercise and eating food, etc. But at the same time she was also feeling very sad because she had to control the diet of the dog and put a new routine into the practice immediately, and new regime will be very difficult for the turkey as well. I watched their progress with growing concern. So here the narrator is saying that he was looking at both of them, that the dog was unable to walk properly and Mrs. Pumphrey was looking very sad, but on the other hand he was also concerned. That means he was also worried about the tricky and its bad health condition. So concern means becoming big issue and feeling disturbed, and says Tricky was tottering along in his little tweed coat. So as both of them were walking and the doctor saw Tricky was tottering, that means Tricky was not able to walk properly, as if he is going to fall along with his little tweed coat. So what do you mean by tweed coat? That means tweed coat is a kind of coat made by thick woolen fabric and twill waves and used especially for suits and coats, and says he had a whole wardrobe of these coats. So he had a wardrobe coat. That means he had a whole cupboard itself consisting of different kinds of coats, and says for the cold weather and a raincoat for the wet days. So he had collection of coats according to the author or according to the weather, such as cold, rainy and rainy weather coat, and says he struggled on dropping in his harness. So as the doctor was watching the dog very attentively, he saw he was struggling while walking because his body weight and dropping in his harness. That means he was not able to walk properly and unable to control his whole body weight and struggling to walk. So the condition of the dog was very poor, and this made the doctor very concerned. So hardness means decrease or bend down due to poor bad health conditions. Further, he says, I thought it wouldn't be long before I heard from Mrs. Pumphrey. So as the doctor thought about bad condition of the dog and thought it wouldn't be long before, that means it would not take a long time and he will be heard from Mrs. Pumphrey. That means he is going to get a call from Mrs. Pumphrey very soon because her dog Tricky was sick. So he was expecting a call from its mistress, and says the expected call came within a few days. So as he was expecting a call from Mrs. Pumphrey and the call came within a few days, that means he called the doctor within a few days because Tricky's health was going down and down every single day. And then she called to the narrator and says Mrs. Pumphrey was distraught. So when he got a call from Mrs. Pumphrey, she was so distraught. That means she was very disturbed, and says Tricky would eat nothing. So she said to the doctor over the phone that Tricky would not eat anything. That means her dog Tricky did not want to eat anything and refusing everything, and says refused even his favorite dishes, and besides he had bouts of vomiting. So she also told the doctor that even he refused his favorite food or favorite dishes. That means Tricky even refused sweets and chocolates which he really liked to eat, and besides he had bouts of vomiting. That means he was also vomiting every short period of time. Further, he says he spent all his time lying on a rug panting. So she also told the doctor that he spent all his time lying on a rug. That means throughout the day he spent all his time lying on a mat or carpet and panting. That means he was not able to breathe very heavily and had great or severe difficulty because his health condition was so bad, and says didn't want to go for walks, didn't want to do anything. So this dog was just lying on the floor and there is no movement or no energy in his body at all, and says I had made my plans in advance. So now the doctor heard everything from Mrs. Pumphrey, but he had made his plan in advance when he saw Tricky first time, and then he thought Mrs. Pumphrey will call him back very soon, and says the only way was to get Tricky out of the house for a period. So according to the plan, he understood that the way to treat Tricky was to get out of the house. That means Tricky should be hospitalized for first because he needs treatment on a serious note. I suggested that he be hospitalized for about fortnight to be kept under observation. So after hearing all this from Mrs. Pumphrey, he suggested that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight. That means the doctor advised her that Tricky must be hospitalized for about 2 weeks so that they can go for further treatment and keep an eye on the illness or root cause of his illness, and says the poor lady almost swooned. So when she heard this from the doctor that her dog must be hospitalized, the poor lady almost swooned. That means she became very sad and fainted because she was so fond of her dog and she was not able to see her dog for 2 weeks, and also she did not want to leave the dog alone in the hospital. So she almost went to faint when she heard that Tricky must be hospitalized, and says she was sure he would pine and die if he did not see her every day. So here Mrs. Pumphrey also knew that he would pine and die. That means her dog Tricky would also feel sad and would become sicker if he did not see her every day. So she became very sad while thinking about all this. So pine and die means to become increasingly thin or weak because of unhappiness. This is the end of the first part of the chapter, A Triumph of Surgery, written by James Herriot. So let's look at the second part of the chapter in my next video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.